Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. We have a lot to catch up on. After a short little break, we are back. Lots of moves with the Mets, lots of moves around Major League Baseball, capped off with one of the arguably the best, if not the best, free agent pitcher available, Ranger Suarez, signing with the Red Sox earlier today. We'll talk about that towards the end. Let's get caught up, dive right into it on everything going on with the Mets. Starting with the Mets, have added Luke Weaver and Jorge Polanco to the team. Because of when these moves happen, kind of run through them a little quickly. Luke Weaver, going to be a good setup man, I think. Part of that bullpen, back end of the bullpen with Reed Garrett when he comes back from injury, along with Devin Williams and Brooks Raley. I think that, 2 years ago in the playoffs, and the whole year really, he was phenomenal for the Yankees. Last year, he had a little bit of a down year, but he also was battling injuries for a lot of the time. A lot of questions that if he was even fully healthy when he did come back. And Jorge Polanco, a very sneaky move for the Mets. I'm a little offensively, I'm not too worried. He's been a pretty consistent middle of the order, solid bat throughout his career. Defensively, a little worried about him playing first base. But, we're going to see how that goes. But I do like the addition. I think that if first base doesn't work out, if Mark Vientos moves over to first base, you have Polanco as a DH option. Although there are very quiet talks about bringing back Marte because of his clubhouse presence. He's still got a little juice left in him, and also his relationship with Juan Soto. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on as the year goes on. And the Mets have also traded Jeff McNeil to the A's, the still nameless A's, after their trademark got denied. This comes shortly after, around the same time, the A's also extended Tyler Soderstrom. That A's lineup is not as bad as you may think it is offensively. Pitching obviously still needs some work, but offensively, that lineup is coming together very nicely. I think Jeff McNeil is a good fit there. I did not like losing Jeff McNeil, but that is part of how this offseason has gone. So coming into the offseason, you had the core of McNeil and Nimmo and Pete. I do and I don't count Diaz because he wasn't, like a core guy like the other three were. But you lose all four of them. And the way the offseason has gone, the Mets have essentially replaced Edwin Diaz with Devin Williams. They have replaced Pete Alonso with Jorge Polanco. They have replaced Jeff McNeil with Marcus Semien. And this big question mark is, can they get the deal done to replace Brandon Nimmo with Kyle Tucker? And I don't like using the word replace because replacing the presence of a Pete, of a Nimmo, and just having the sheer dominance of Edwin Diaz in the back end of the bullpen, I don't think replacing is the right word, but it's a new era of the Mets. And thinking on it, how much it sucked emotionally, losing all those guys in the span of about a month and a half, it's going to be a very new era of Mets baseball. And part of it is very exciting. Part of it also sucks just because you're not going to have that, staple of having Nimmo and McNeil and Pete in the lineup. There's no more trumpets coming out in the ninth inning. So from that standpoint, it sucks a little bit, but I do think that this team is slowly starting to come together a little bit. I do think that if the Mets can finalize Kyle Tucker, I will feel a lot better about it. So where we stand with Tucker, it seems that it's going to be a shorter deal with a higher AAV for wherever Tucker ends up. The rumors are that the Mets are one of the most aggressive suitors. Steve Cohen is involved in it, which was very good, considering Steve Cohen was very involved in getting Juan Soto. And right now we're looking at about $50 million a year is what the reports are. I don't know what's true and not true. It's Twitter, so 90% of it is just made up crap. But I would love this. It would be a great get to get Kyle Tucker in this lineup. And on paper, is it the same Mets that we've come to know and love with the staples? No. It is still not a terrible lineup. The Mets are not as bad as they are being made out to be. The first power rankings, I know I'm not going to put a lot of stock into them, but the first power rankings that MLB.com released at the start of January had the Mets 8th in Major League Baseball, which a lot of people thought was very generous. But when you look at this team on paper, again, I know they don't play on paper, but they are not in as bad of a position as it at face value it looked like. If you really looked at where this roster stands. So in the infield right now, we're just going to pencil in Polanco at first base. So you got Polanco, Semien, Lindor, Beatty, not Vientos. Beatty at third. Vientos probably DHing right now, or is slotted as a DH. And then you got Alvey behind the plate. And then in the outfield, you got Soto and right. You got Carson Bench. Right now, Tyrone Taylor, definite, potentially, probably Carson Bench at some point in center field. Or have him in left field and keep Tyrone Taylor in center field. And then you got another big question mark in left field. I think that bringing in Tucker obviously makes the most sense, or bringing in Bellinger. I do feel with Bellinger that like him and the Yankees are sort of meant to be together, and the Yankees have to do something because they have done next to nothing this offseason. And considering what the Red Sox have done, what the Orioles have done, the Blue Jays spending like crazy, it just seems like they need each other very much. I worded that really weird. The Yankees need Cody Bellinger more than they need Kyle Tucker, in my opinion. So I think that Bellinger, yes, he's a good fit for the Mets. I think he's a better fit for the Yankees, and I think that just makes more sense for him to return to the Yankees. Tucker, I think the Mets have a realistic shot at landing him. And where that ends up, remains to be seen. I think that would be a great get. Shorter deal, higher AAV, I'm okay with that. And now we got an offense. We got a good-looking offense. You can build some depth on the bench with Mauricio and Acuna are already there. Maybe you bring back Marte or Winker, telling them, hey, you're primarily probably going to be in a bench role. Same with Jet Williams, or they wait on Jet Williams and see what happens in center field with Benj and with Tyrone Taylor, and potentially, depending on what happens with Kyle Tucker, what's going on in left field, how does Jet Williams fit into this equation? And same with Ryan Clifford, who more so for first base, where does he fit in potentially? Maybe not in 2026, maybe as a September call-up in 2026, but more so in 2027. So I think that the Mets are in a great spot offensively. Bullpen still could use some work getting there. It definitely is starting to fill out a little bit better than it was when Edwin Diaz left. With the addition of Luke Weaver and Devin Williams and Brooks Raley back there, it's starting, and Brazoban, it's starting to fill up a little bit. I would like another arm or two in that bullpen, a more established arm, and not relying so much on any rookies or new faces or anything like that you kind of just throwing on the wall and seeing what sticks. Starting rotation. I definitely am in the minority where the Mets starting rotation to me is not as bad as people make it out to be. So right now, when you look at the rotation, in some order, you're going to have Senga, Manaya, Clay Holmes, David Peterson. You got Christian Scott in there. You got Nolan McLean, who's probably guaranteed, if not starting opening day, Brandon Sproat, and Jonah Tong. So you got 8 guys for your rotation. Jonah Tong and Sproat, unless the Mets want to start them on the team in the bullpen come opening day, they're probably starting the season in AAA. Christian Scott, I could see, because he's coming back from Tommy John, starting the season as the long man in the bullpen, and then maybe making a spot start here and there, or if someone in the rotation gets hurt, instant slide him back in there. I could see Christian Scott being kind of that Swiss Army knife for the Mets. So with that, you take those 3 out. Your 5-man rotation, you're in some order: Nolan McLean, Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes, David Peterson. To me, that is not... Is it the best rotation in baseball? No. It's definitely not the worst. It's definitely in the front of the pack. I'd say definitely a top 10 to 12. Definitely top 10, probably. I'm going to talk myself into it. I think it's a top 10 rotation in baseball. The thing is health with these guys. Clay Holmes was good last year. I don't care that he went 5 innings, 3 runs, 5 innings, 3 runs, 5 innings, 3 runs every single time. You knew what you were getting. He was consistent. David Peterson, I think, frankly, just ran out of gas just because of innings. You know, he's pitched a lot more than he ever has before in a season, and I think towards the end of the year, he just started to run out of gas a little bit. Fine. That is what it is. Nolan McLean, stud. No concern with that. Manaea and Senga are the two big question marks because of health. I've said it a million times on here, on TikTok, on Twitter. I am not fully convinced that Manaea and Senga were fully healthy when they came back. And why do I say that? Because where the Mets were, when they were starting, they were teetering on the spiraling downwards and still floating above water. That's when Senga and Manaea were starting to come back. And I think that the Mets picked up the pace on them a little bit because they could see that, hey, we're starting to sink a little bit. We need some reinforcements. And they brought them back. Maybe a little quicker. I don't know. I'm not a medical expert. They know a lot more than I do, but I'm not convinced that either of them were fully healthy. And when they are fully healthy, we saw how great Sean Manaea was in 2024. We've seen how great Senga's been awesome when he's out there. The problem is he's not out there because he keeps getting hurt. This last injury, I know a lot of Mets fans will blame Pete for it. But when Senga has been out there, he's been phenomenal. He just hasn't been out there. And I think a healthy Senga, a healthy Manaea, Nolan McLean establishing himself as a stud in this rotation, and then Peterson and Clay Holmes kind of just continue to do their thing. I think they'll be a lot better position just because of they pitched a full season as a starter. Now they got the innings under their belt. Now they can rest, regroup, and get ready to go come spring training. I like this rotation a lot. I think that, again, probably McLean's probably the number one right now, followed by Senga, Manaea, Holmes, Peterson, or something to that effect. I don't think this is as bad of a rotation as people are making it out to be. Yes, it would be nice to add maybe a Freddie Peralta or a Tarik Skubal, but if I'm the Mets, I'm playing the waiting game a little bit. Because the Mets have, over the past couple years, since Stearns and Cohen have taken over, they have really rebuilt that farm system. I wouldn't give all that up for 1 year potentially of Skubal or for 1 year of Freddie Peralta. I would only be giving up that talent if I knew that as soon as I make that trade for one of those two guys that I'm extending them. I would play the waiting game if I'm the Mets and wait this season out, see what you got, and then go in on one of them in free agency next year. Because they're both going to be free agents. Skubal is probably gone from the Tigers solely because of, we saw the arbitration and how far off they are on value. Freddie Peralta, I think, is more likely to be traded. Skubal, I think, is going to wait until next offseason to get his payday. If I'm the Mets, I'm holding on to the young talent that I have because you spent all that time rebuilding it. I'm keeping that young talent, waiting a year for next offseason, and then I'm going all in on either Tarik Skubal or Freddie Peralta. I think that one of those two is a very realistic option for the Mets, and I think both of them would be great fits. Obviously, you're not getting both. You're getting one or the other. I think Freddie Peralta is a little bit riskier, but also a higher, or how do I want to word this? It's not going to cost as much for Freddie Peralta, and he does come with a little bit of risk, but he comes with an amazing upside because Freddie Peralta is phenomenal. Very, very underappreciated how awesome of a pitcher he is. And then Tarek Skubal, you just know you're getting the best pitcher in baseball. So Freddie Peralta maybe comes with a little more risk, but it's not going to cost as much as Tarek Skubal, if that makes sense. So either way, I expect the Mets fully to be in on one of those two next offseason. I think the smarter play is to hold off on trading your young talent for them this year. Wait for them for next year in free agency. I would focus on securing Kyle Tucker, getting that to the finish line, and then maybe getting another arm or two in the bullpen. And then I'm feeling really good about where this team is heading into 2026. Do I think they can compete for the division? Yes. After today, with Ranger Suarez leaving the Phillies, the NL East opens up a little bit. You know the Braves are going to bounce back a little bit because Acuna is going to be fully healthy for the whole year. There's too much talent on that Braves team. And the Phillies are the same way. I still think it's going to be a 3-horse race. But the Phillies losing Ranger Suarez, unless the Phillies can go and get a Bo Bichette maybe, I don't know where the Phillies are going to go. But they don't have a catcher right now with question marks if they're going to re-sign JT Realmuto. So I think the NL East is a little more open than people may realize initially. I definitely think the Mets are in contention for a wild card spot. If they can compete for the division, that's going to remain to be seen. But I definitely think that the NL East is a little more open than when you look at it. If you really look at it, I think it's definitely a little more open than people realize. And that's definitely me just being overly optimistic as a Mets fan. But it's a new era for the Mets. I'm trying to keep an open mind to it. It really, really sucks. I know I'm going to be back in my feels again on opening day, seeing Pete and Edwin and McNeil and Nimmo all introduced with different teams. But that's baseball. I mean, sometimes that's the business part of the baseball. Business part of baseball sucks. So it's just kind of is what it is at this point. I am feeling a lot better about this Mets team. After reacting emotionally to all these moves and changes and then stepping back a little bit and really looking at it, this team's really not in as bad of a position as you think. And it's kind of the same. So being a Steelers fan with Mike Tomlin stepping down yesterday, it's kind of like the two things can be true thing. Like, yes, you're appreciative of how it was and you're thankful for how it was, but, maybe it is time for a change. And the same was with the Steelers, and the same could be said with the Mets. Maybe it was time for a change. The more and more reports that are coming out, with Adam Ottavino talking and Paul Blackburn talking, it seems that Mets clubhouse was getting very, very toxic. And I'm not going to speculate as to who's to blame, but it maybe have gotten to a point where that group had become so toxic with each other that the Mets were like, hey, fans aren't going to like it initially, but we have to break this up a little bit because we're thinking about the future. We're thinking about the long term. And that's just sometimes it's one of those like change is good. Change is good sometimes. So maybe this is what the Mets needed. They needed to shake things up. And we're going to see where it takes them in 2026. So let's wrap up this episode. Talk about a couple little things around Major League Baseball. Edward Cabrera and Alex Bregman are going to the Cubs. Cubs get a nice arm in their rotation with Cabrera. You're expecting Justin Steele back at some point. So I like that move of getting Cabrera and getting Bregman because it helps the Cubs in a position where they're trying to keep pace with the Brewers. I do still think the Central is the Brewers' division to lose. But with the addition of Cabrera, with the addition of Bregman, I think the Cubs have put themselves in a great spot to try and keep pace with them and maybe overtake them. Bregman kind of ties in with Ranger Suarez going to the Red Sox, and because just the Red Sox in general. Until today, when the Red Sox signed Ranger Suarez to a 5-year deal, first of all, from a Mets perspective, love that Ranger Suarez is out of the NL East. The Red Sox were the only team in baseball who had not signed a free agent until today when they signed Ranger Suarez. first from getting Ranger Suarez, great get for the Red Sox. Made a TikTok video about it earlier. He slides into that number 2 spot behind Crochet, Sonny Gray in the number 3 spot in that rotation. Brian Bayos part of that. That is a nice 1-2-3 that the Red Sox have. Obviously, it's a great 1-2 punch come a 3-game series in the playoffs with Crochet and with Ranger Suarez. The problem is the Red Sox just can't get anyone. I mean, that rotation, I think, is a nice 1-2-3. I think Sonny Gray is going to be greatly undervalued in that rotation. But the big ticket is Crochet number 1 with Ranger Suarez right behind him. The problem with the Red Sox is they have been tied to every single big-name free agent this offseason, and they have whiffed on every single one of them. I was adamant that if the Mets did not keep Pete Alonso, he was going to be a Boston Red Sox. They were the only two options. He was going to be a Met or he was going to be a Red Sox. Did not have the Orioles sneaking in there. They've been tied with Ranger Suarez, with bringing back Bregman. They just haven't been able to land anyone. They finally land Ranger Suarez. They finally get a good arm in that rotation, along with Sonny Gray, so they've added 2 solid arms. They've also added Wilson Contreras to play some first base. Good bat in the lineup, but, you wanted to keep Bregman. The Red Sox are just... I don't understand how they were tied to so many big-name free agents, and it took till now for them to finally land one. That was crazy to me. I think that, given the Red Sox are not a bad team. They are a very good team. They are a playoff team. And in the AL East, the Orioles have made a lot of moves to improve their team. The Rays are always just going to be around just because they're the Rays. The Blue Jays are spending like their pants are on fire. The Yankees and the Red Sox are the only 2 teams that really haven't done much. I mean, the Red Sox did get Contreras and Sonny Gray before Ranger Suarez. But compared to what the Orioles and Blue Jays have done, the Yankees and Red Sox are falling behind a little bit. And now it's the Yankees that are falling behind. They got Weathers from the Marlins, but that's about real. And bringing back Blackburn and Ahmed Rosario, and that's, you wonder if picking up the qualifying offer on Trent Grisham is going to hurt them. I think the Yankees have to keep Bellinger if they want to keep pace in this division. The AL East is the 2 East divisions are, I don't think, as clear cut. Yes, Phillies are probably the favorite in the NL East. In the AL East, it's probably going to end up being the Blue Jays. I think they are a little more open and competitive than meets the eye. But again, there is a lot that can happen between now and the start of spring training. There are a lot of big names still out there. Kyle Tucker's the one we're all watching right now with the Mets. And we're going to take a quick little... Let's check Twitter quick. Just for a quick second, see if anything crazy has transpired with Kyle Tucker, and it doesn't look like... Yeah, it doesn't look like we got anything recently. I mean, yesterday, everything was picking up with Kyle Tucker. It's likely and anticipated that Kyle Tucker will have a decision by the end of the week. I hope it's the Mets. I don't know. I mean, I know the Blue Jays were involved in him. I don't know really who else. The Yankees. The Yankees are in on everyone but can never get anyone. They're kind of like the Red Sox in that way, so I don't know. I think if I had to, the Dodgers could be an outside shot. I mean, I think the Mets or Blue Jays are probably one of the 2 is where he's going to end up. But we're going to see by the end of the week. So for the Mets fans out there, change is good. And I'm still trying to get myself to believe that. It's starting to look that change was needed for this team. And I think that the direction the Mets are going is going to pay off long term, even though right now emotionally it sucks. But I do think that long term this might be a better path for the Mets in terms of getting back to the playoffs and making a World Series run. So you got to believe, still trust Cohen. Stearns is frankly on my shit list right now, unless he can if he can finalize Kyle Tucker, I will feel a lot better about David Stearns. But losing Pete and Nimmo and trading Nimmo And losing Diaz, he got on my shit list a little bit. But I think the Mets can salvage this offseason if they can finalize Kyle Tucker. So we'll stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe if you're listening on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. Make sure you follow on TikTok at RTA_pod. Make sure you follow on Twitter. And we will see you guys next week. We're going to get back to weekly episodes starting next week. And hopefully Kyle Tucker will be a New York Met, or the Mets can make some other moves. And we will also touch on any other moves around Major League Baseball. The Hall of Fame voting is coming up soon, so we'll try and time that episode after the Hall of Fame voting is announced. And we'll talk about the Hall of Fame class for this upcoming summer. And that'll be it. So thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, and let's go Mets.